a very special guest joining me today. Brown's salary cap wizard, shall we say. Overall great guy, Jack Duffin, has ever so kindly lent me some time out of his, pardon me, very busy schedule to let me pick his brain a little bit, hopefully provide some reassurance to my somewhat optimistic outlook on the Cleveland Browns moving forward. But all jokes aside, before I kind of carry on and forget, I want to give a shout out to Owen Jones from the Believe in Brits podcast for making this possible. But first and foremost, Jack, thank you for coming on. How are you doing on this cold and wet Super Bowl weekend here in the UK?
I'm good. Yeah, we're getting into that peak season. Free agency for me is always the most interesting time, where lots of stuff goes on. We find out how much people think different players are worth. So what's that, 12th of March, something right around there this year. So counting down the days.
Yep. If you don't know Jack by now, in my opinion, one of the best in the business when it comes to Brown's salary cap and just the NFL salary cap as a whole. Jack does work for the OBR. He's a co-host on Paul Brown UK podcast and also a chairman and co-owner of the 100% fan-owned football club. Is it East Thurrock? Am I pronouncing that right?
Club, yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to waste any of the time that I have with you today, mate, so I'm going to jump straight into things. Start it off with not so controversial, maybe, shall we say, or maybe very controversial, Deshaun Watson. I'm sure you're under the same impression as me that the experiment is over. He's probably never going to play for the Browns again. So inevitably, you know, the negative discourse surrounding his contract is pretty loud at the moment within kind of the Browns community. So the first question I want to ask you is, what do you think moving on from Watson's contract actually looks like in practicality? And, you know, what are the steps that you think the Browns will take between now and when Deshaun Watson is no longer a member of the team?
Yeah, so what I expect to happen this year, obviously there's a caveat to all this of, did he re-injure himself doing something stupid? There is no answer to that at the moment. If he did, they can void off the final 92 million and we save ourselves a whole lot of headache, which 92 million because he's due 46 million for the 2025 season and 46 million for the 2026 season. So that's what he's effectively due money-wise in terms of cash. So if he's done something stupid, they've got proof of that, they can just void that off. And that's not uncommon. There was and it can be as simple as players working out away from the facility. If they're doing something they shouldn't be doing, they can have that money voided. So it's just a brutal part of the NFL. And it's just standard across any contract. So it wouldn't be uncommon if they pulled the plug. Work on the basis that's not the case. He's still going to be under contract for 2 more years. I don't expect to see him at all for next season. He'll probably, whether it's the NFI list, well, it's probably not unless he's done something stupid. So he'll just go straight onto the PUP list, followed by the injured reserve once the season starts. He can just rest and rehab. And even if he was able to come back mid-season, it's not in his best interest. Rest up, recover, put yourselves in the best possible position. Then when we get to 2026, I have no issue with him trying to compete to be the backup. Because lots of people this offseason are really excited about Justin Fields. If we look at Deshaun Watson and Justin Fields and all of their key passing metrics over the last 3 years, every single season he is basically Justin Fields but runs around a little less. So if you think Justin Fields is capable of being a bridge quarterback this season and teams should be considering him, you naturally believe Deshaun Watson is a backup quality quarterback. So anyone that's telling you they like Justin Fields and they don't like Deshaun Watson needs to just go and watch both quarterbacks again, because yes, you can say he's not a starting level quarterback, and I think everyone's happy with that with Watson. He still has value as a backup quarterback. So if he decides actually that maybe they draft someone that is the answer this offseason, if he's ended up as the year as the backup, I'm not that upset. He can do a job there. And look, if someone goes down, he gets a shot and he plays well in 1-2 games, he can turn that into maybe a backup job in Atlanta in 2027. But he's effectively going to be on the roster for the 2025-2026 season. And then 2027, they'll post-June 1st cut him on the first day of the league year. And they're going to split that dead cap over, what would that be, the 2027 and 2028 year. But that's all been agreed. It's all set. And it's just a matter of process now. The only question is just around insurance money, which it's not very transparent. We don't know the full details, but once this season's over, because you get the insurance money a year behind, once we get around to the next off season and probably around March next year, they'll get some insurance money. Who knows? It could be 10 million, it could be 46 million. We just don't know that number. But they'll get some money back. It's not the end of the world either way.
Yeah, the insurance thing is something that I wanted to ask you as well, because it's something that I think is confusing for a lot of people. I mean, they don't really know. I mean, where's the money coming from? Who's actually paying out the insurance? I think it's something that, I mean, I myself struggle to quite understand how it all works. So do you actually know how that all works and where it comes, kind of who pays it and stuff?
Yeah, so we know some of the process. So Jimmy Haslam, on the team, effectively pays cash to an insurance broker that says, I'm going to pay X amount and we're going to protect X amount of this player's cash effectively from this season. So that's paid for out the owner. Doesn't count on the salary cap. So you can pay as much insurance money as you want, take out as many insurance premiums. You've got to sign them into the players' contracts, but players have no issue, makes no difference to them. If that player then misses enough time, it's usually at least 6 games in a season for it to start paying back insurance, then you will get that money as a salary cap credit the following year. So Deshaun Watson, he missed more than 6 games. There's some insurance stuff around there for the 2024 season. So in March, they'll get some form of cap credit. But what that's doing is effectively the team get given the cash back and then they just offset it with Deshaun, so they gain a bit of cap space. In terms of Deshaun still gets his money, the team gets some cash, but it just saves that bit of salary cap space. People have said, oh, well, the rich teams are able to take out lots of insurance and the poor teams can't. Will the league ban this? And people always come back with this bizarre idea that the league's just going to ban everything that rich teams do. The players' union are not going to be signing up to something that says, yeah, pay the players less. They're just not going to sign up for that. So it's just a fantasy idea that people are like, oh, the league will get rid of it. They are not going to get rid of anything that puts money in players' pockets because the players' union is not going to agree to it. So insurances, the Eagles, the Browns, teams with lots of cash, they have loads of insurances and they'll keep doing them. Nothing's going to stop. Basically, everyone on the Browns probably has of decent caliber has insurance protection. And why, when we get to March, you'll see the Browns cap space increase a bit because we don't know what that figure is. Unless you have a player's physical contract, we don't know what the insurances are. They're not available on sites like Over the Cap. So we just have to wait and see until, boom, some cap space appears out of nowhere.
Yeah. So you spoke about how you think, probably the most likely outcome with Deshaun Watson is that he just plays out the remainder of the 2 years left on his contract. But for the people that, out there that are very angry, sorry, my throat's been playing up quite a lot today. For the people that are very angry, with Deshaun Watson, want him out as immediately as possible, what would it look like, cutting him this year, which I think me and you can both agree is just something that would be certainly very unlikely to say the least, versus cutting him next year if you were to try and get out of the contract before the 2 years are up.
Yeah, and so if you cut him now, you've got no insurance money and you have to give him 92 million of cash. So you're missing out on potentially 40 million coming back into the team. So it's just stupid, like insane level stupid, bang your head against a wall to go, let's just cut him now. That's just emotionally charged, no common sense in there, because there is no reason to do it. But I don't even know, you would just completely destroy your salary cap. At that stage, rebuild, tear it all down, give up on at least the next 2 years, get rid of everyone. There's just no realistic way to do it, and it just doesn't help the team. It just makes things worse. When a player has no guarantees, you can walk away from any of the deals. When a player has guarantees, it just doesn't make sense to do it. Obviously, we've seen one example in recent years with the Russell Wilson, but you rarely ever see a player with guaranteed money cut. We're probably going to see another one in Kirk Cousins, but these are very, very rare things to happen. If a player's got guarantees, just bank on him being on the roster.
Yeah. So I think to kind of summarise the Watson situation kind of as a whole, is it? I know you kind of what you've said kind of would answer it in itself, but just kind of sum it up. Is his contract the Alcatraz that the media make it out to be? Because everyone likes to run with this idea that his contract is basically going to sink the ship, cripple the team, can't sign anyone, going to have to rely on rookies and all of this stuff. So, kind of in your opinion, is it? And I know obviously what your answer is. So why is it not essentially?
Yeah, so if you look at, there's two different things, and I know you want to come onto it later, but we'll do it now. So you've got the NFL salary cap, which is the maximum amount teams can sort of count on the accounting system. And the real thing that matters is cash. How much money are you giving to players for the actual team? So over the last 4 years, the Browns have spent more cash than anyone else in the NFL. Number one, quite comfortably. We're talking, they're spending about 50 million a year more in terms of cash. And to say that, that's about 20% extra on the budget. So that's a significant upgrade. If you said, let's take Deshaun Watson's contract out there, they're about 8th. So, yes, Deshaun Watson's deal's having an impact. It drops you from the highest spender to the 8th highest spender. It's not the end of the world, if I'm honest. Yes, I would love to have an extra 46 million to spend on bringing in more free agents. But in the grand scheme of it, if you're 8th, 10th, woe is me. Get over it. It would be my honest opinion.
Yeah. So, finally on the quarterbacks, before we move on to the Browns as a whole, obviously everyone is obviously wondering what we're going to do at quarterback. What do you think we should do? Are you kind of in the camp of bringing a free agent, maybe draft one day two or something, or are you in the camp of drafting one of these guys? Is it Cam Ward or Shadur Sanders at number 2 overall?
So I don't worry about the draft. I basically ignore the draft until I get a week into free agency. So quite frankly, I have not spent any time looking at them. So that is, I'm not worried at all on the draft yet. I couldn't tell you any particular names. Guys that really interest me in free agency, I would love to bring in Kirk Cousins, because if Kirk Cousins is cut, he's going to cost 1.255 mil or something for the year, because the Falcons are picking up the rest of the 27.5 million because he's a cut. So the same as the Steelers had with Russell Wilson this past season. So I'd bring him in because, look, if he turns out to be great, you're paying him the veteran minimum. And if he struggles in pre-season, you just cut him. You've lost $1 million. Who cares? It's not the end of the world. So it's one that bet on that upside. Then in terms of the backup, I would love them to go after Mac Jones. Mac Jones had a fantastic rookie season. We're talking he was a top 10 quarterback. After that, the Pats roster fell through the floor. It wasn't as good. And I look at, well, what has Kevin Stefanski done as head coach? He's elevated these mid quarterbacks and made them a lot better. So I look at him as a perfect player that can come in, and if Kevin Stefanski can do this, he should be able to do that. Neither of them quarterbacks are going to take you to the promised land, but they both get you in playoff contention. So that's where I'm looking at going, look, if we can't sort out a long-term answer at quarterback, and if you can get a top 16 quarterback, you're in the playoffs. Do that, and then we'll just keep swinging in the draft. I would say he's not my personal choice, but Daniel Jones seems to be getting a lot of love from the Browns, potentially. So it wouldn't surprise me if it's Daniel Jones rather than Kirk Cousins in there, but it's all the same, roughly. I think Kirk's got a slightly higher ceiling, but Daniel Jones has probably got a higher floor because there's no injury concerns around him. Jackson Dart seems to be one that's getting quite a bit of love from the Browns. So if they don't swing for someone at 2, if you don't draft a quarterback at 2, you trade down. I think they are mad if they select any position player, because yes, these guys are good, but if you are not drafting a quarterback at 2, you've got to move down because you have to add assets for next year. And that's not assets to potentially get up to number 1, because quite frankly, if someone's got number 1 and they need a QB, they're taking them. But you go up and you're that highest team of whoever's not taking a quarterback looking at a trade down. If you've got 2 firsts, you're definitely more appealing than everyone else.
Yeah, it's the Kurt stuff's funny because I've had a personal joke with one of my friends about Kirk Cousins eventually going to end up playing under Kevin Stefanski for the Browns, and it just feels like it's so obviously going to happen. But I've kind of been in the camp all kind of since the season ended of that kind of idea, bring in a Kirk Cousins, bring in someone like that, even if it's re-signing Jameis, bringing in Jacoby Brissett, someone like that, and then not taking a swing at number 2 on a quarterback, drafting maybe a project day 2. As you said, trade back option is by far the best option for the Browns in this draft, for me. But moving on to kind of the Browns salary cap as a whole, I know you kind of mentioned there the difference between cash and cap is something that I think, purely because there's not really that many mainstream information on this kind of stuff, is personally why I think the work you do is really important, because before I was kind of introduced to your work, it was hard for me to find information on this stuff. So it's something that I think a lot of people just don't quite understand, and that's at no fault of their own. It's, as I said, just because they can't get the information on it. But as I said, you kind of mentioned the difference between the two. How is it the Browns use that kind of cash cap model to their advantage, and as you mentioned, to be able to spend more money consistently every year than pretty much every other team in the NFL?
Yeah, so just kind of a rough steer. So say you give a player 50 million, and I know no one really other than quarterbacks on 50 million, but if you give someone 50 million of cash this year, you can use signing option bonuses, and even though they've been given 50 million of cash, what that will do on the salary cap is 10 million this year and 10 million over each of the 5 years. And so you can split stuff over up to 5 years. And what the Browns are effectively doing is they're doing that with all of their deals. They're saying, we give you some now, we split everything over 5 years. And because the salary cap roughly goes up about 8.5% each year, as long as the salary cap keeps going up, then you're basically using the budget for 2 years' time this year. So say the salary cap's obviously more than this, but it's easier to explain. Say the salary cap was 100 million this year, the Browns are spending 120 million of cash, and that's what they're doing every single year. If next year it's then 120 million, they're spending 144 million of cash, and it's constantly always 20% more. And because the salary cap goes up in a pretty sustainable manner each year, you're just using that as kind of a, we'll keep spending, split it all over 5 years, and the cap continues to rise. So that's perfectly sustainable. I've done a couple of articles just on the sustainability of that model. Of, as long as you don't do anything stupid, if you go a year, we want to spend 140%, you've got to start unwinding that and getting a buffer, because the salary cap doesn't go up. If the salary cap was going up 20% every year, yeah, we can talk about spending 140%, but the salary cap goes up 8%, so about 20% is the limit. You get a bit of insurance money back, so that kind of brings it down to you roughly spending 115%, but that's kind of just stuff to factor in for when someone does the maths and it's like, oh, well, this isn't sustainable. You get a bit, and incentives come back and things like that. So that's what they're doing. If you get another black swan event, pandemic, something like that, you are screwed. No way to shape it. You are absolutely screwed. And the Saints are a perfect example of this. So the Saints used to do it. The pandemic happened, and what they've done is they've refused to die. And what they need to do is blow it up. Might take a year, might take 2 at worst, and go, look, we need a hard reset, and we'll go again. If you got another pandemic and the salary cap crashes, you are going to need to reset. But in all honesty, those are once in a generation, once in a lifetime sort of events. I would much rather spend 120% every single year on a sustainable model than worry about, oh, there might be a pandemic, so let's spend a low budget. You've got Joe Burrow currently doing Radio Row at the Super Bowl, moaning that the Bengals cannot keep a great roster together because the owner's poor. The Raiders have gone out and brought in lots of this external financing because the league changed their rules and sort of said you can sell small stakes in the team because some of these teams just can't catch up. The Cowboys, famously low spender, they just say, oh, we haven't got cap space to do these things. They've put themselves in that position because they're refusing to do what the Browns are doing, what the 49ers are doing, what the Eagles are doing, spreading this money out. The Browns do it to a bigger extent than everyone else, but the Eagles and the 49ers are right around the same thing.
Yeah, and I think involved in that is the kind of idea of, when you restructure and push that money down the line, I think that's what scares a lot of people. They have this perception that, down the line is essentially always going to have to come back to bite you. You can't keep pushing it down the line. I know you talk a lot about, the idea of these restructures are essentially taking out an interest-free loan, while when you're pushing that money down the line. So I know you kind of explained it there, but how does it work with those restructures in terms of, as you explained, with the salary cap going up, how that is essentially an interest-free loan?
Yeah, so every year they keep pushing that money out. So the players still get the cash, doesn't impact that. It's just how it goes on the accounting. So you're still earning, the players will still earn the money. The accountant just goes, hey, we'll split this over 5 years, we'll split this over 5 years, and they'll just keep doing that methodically. What you can't do, and why if you're a bad team you don't want to get into this, you can't be chopping and changing the roster every year. So if every year you're like, hey, we want to get rid of half the roster and bring in everyone else, you don't want to do that. You need cornerstones of the franchise that you want to keep around. Your Joel Batonios, your guys like that, where you've committed to them and they're here for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. You can't be going, oh, every 2 years we're going to reset the roster. So if you're sacking your GM regularly, you don't want to get into this strategy. You need something stable. The Eagles, the Browns, the 49ers. There's no real fear that you're going to blow everything up, because if you, the same way as now, if the Browns wanted to go into a full tank, it's going to take 2 years because you've got to clear off this money and reset. Whereas, yeah, you just don't want to do that. It's a bad move to do a reset, because we saw what happened last time. It didn't work. And the reason it didn't work is because once you gut all the talent, it takes too long to build everything back up. The league's about more than just draft picks. They got the draft picks, they've extended the draft picks, but they've got to just keep hitting and keep building.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've always been in that camp of stability is what the Browns need. You look at those like kind of late 2010 years, the 1-31, constantly sacking coaches, constantly sacking GMs. You're never able to build a consistent model like the Browns have been able to build now. So, for everyone, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Andrew Berry is faultless by any means, but for all the people that are quick to just kind of jump at the let's fire everyone, let's blow it up, I don't think they quite understand it's not just the basic practicality of you're just sacking the GM and everything's going to remain the same. But with a new GM, you're also, as you mentioned, you're getting rid of basically a plan that you've fought long time before. And as Andrew Berry always mentions, they're always thinking ahead, and all the decisions they make go into that as well. So looking in the short term, what is the Browns salary cap outlook, for this off season? I think I read in one of your articles recently that they'd have around 41 million in salary cap space this off season. Do you think they entertain the idea of a rebuild, or do you think they spend some of this money?
Yeah, so they're, what are they now? Minus 30 mil. We're going to get the adjustments, so that might be 5-10 million more of cap space. So it takes it to 20. The Browns think there'll be more cap. The cap amount will be much higher than what over the cap are projecting, so that might be another 5 million. And then, hey, we're at minus 15. With restructures trading Greg Newsome and Joel Batonio retiring, they can free up 89 million of cap space. Let's work out, if Joel Batonio doesn't retire, then you're probably talking about, hey, we'll create 83 million of cap space. So if you're going from minus 15, adding on 85 million, you're in a pretty good spot. So there's plenty of money to throw around. They just need to decide, well, who do they want to spend it on? And then you're also going to add space. If you start getting rid of the likes of Thornhill, things like that, you can then bring more guys in. So I expect them to go out and spend. And fundamentally, the decision between whether you get rid of Myles Garrett and blow it up is how do you view the team? Because I look at the team and I go back 2 years ago. They finished with 11 wins under Joe Flacco. For me, that was much more of a 9-win team that exceeded expectations. And then I look at kind of the team last year. If Jameis Winston was the quarterback for 17 games, yes, there would have been a few turnovers, but it would have been a wild experience at the same time. And I think they're an 8 and 9 win team. If Jameis starts 17 games, if you don't trade Cooper and you don't trade Zadarius Smith, and if they're a 9-win team, yes, Myles Garrett probably isn't having this conversation about wanting out, because he's going, hey, they had Jameis Winston and they still won 9 games. Get me a better quarterback and we're over the edge. But then you're picking 10th, 12th, and are we talking about being able to get a quarterback, being able to get a blue chip player, because you're down much further in the draft. So it's one that it is what it is. But I think they can turn this roster take the quarterback out of the equation, look at just the 52-man roster without the starting quarterback. They're going to easily be a top 8 roster next year. Why would I be wanting to blow that up? Yes, they need to find the quarterback. I don't know where that answer is coming from, but that needs to come through the draft. You cannot find a top 16 quarterback through free agency, through a trade market normally. Yes, you might. Sam Darnold's done it for 1 year, but will he do it for a second year? Probably not.
Yeah.
Kirk Cousins can come in and, he's provided league average play before, but that's a 1 year fix. It has to come through the draft. So get a guy, Kirk Cousins, Mac Jones, whatever you've mentioned, Winston, Brissett, other guys. Find a guy that can just be serviceable for a year, get to the playoffs, lose the first game, but keep swinging in the draft. And once you get that guy that's just top 16, if you think Shador or Cam Ward is a top 16 quarterback potential, just get them. And if they don't work out, we'll draft another one next year. You don't have to commit to them long term. So just get someone in and just see what you've got. Because with the amount of money they're spending and the amount of talent that's on this roster, a couple of free agency moves, not silly money, just a solid left tackle, a couple of other pieces, another corner maybe, a safety to replace Thornhill. That is a top 8 roster minus a starting quarterback. And you've just got to find that in the draft.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think just to kind of sum up the whole Browns salary cap outlook, I'm sure you would agree to the statement that the Browns aren't quite as doomed, as the media makes it out to be, as some of these, I think a lot of the fan accounts in the Browns community kind of love the doom and gloom stuff, and they kind of want it to be bad, and they want everything to be on fire and, kind of just go into the bin. But as you kind of just summed up, the Browns aren't as screwed as everyone kind of makes it out to be. And as you mentioned earlier, the model that they operate under is sustainable, as long as, obviously, of course, we don't have another, once in a lifetime event like a pandemic, which, fingers crossed, not just for football reasons, but for everything else as well, that doesn't happen again. But finally, you mentioned Miles earlier. Quickly, just to touch on him, what's your personal opinion on how this is going to unfold? Do you think they trade him? Do you think he stays? And if they were to trade him, what would that look like, essentially, financially, in terms of the dead cap?
Yeah, Miles is going nowhere. Miles knows this. Miles' team knows this. They just need to get on with it and accept it. He's not moving. He's signed this contract. If he didn't want to sign the contract, he could have not signed the contract 5 years ago. But he did, and he's agreed to be here. They've got 4 years of control over him. So he's got 2 more years under contract. They can franchise tag him twice. Yeah, he can be a free agent in 2029 if he really wants. But he knows he doesn't want to sit around with that with no guarantees in his deal. He's going to sign. It's just a matter of when, what leverage he's got, which is none. And just accepting the consequences that, yes, he might want to go and play on the Commanders. I would look at the Commanders and go, hey, that's fun. I would love to be a part of that. But that's a hypothetical that just doesn't exist in the real world. So it's interesting to know what's happened in the last 2 weeks, because 2 weeks ago we were hearing whether it's Hard Knocks, something else, how he was confident, he was all that, and then in the last week chat to LeBron and it's all doom and gloom and the Browns are horrendous team and slagging off his teammates, which is not a place I would look at Myles Garrett as the sensible, thoughtful leader, and instead he's acting like it's irrational what he's coming out with. So it's one where he's going to get re-signed. It's just a matter of what that number is. I would be shocked if we went into the season. I'd put it over an 80% chance he's back here on an extension. Nothing's going to change. And the reason why, if you go out and you trade him, you go from, he's 19 million on the salary cap roughly off the top of my head. If you trade him, this dead cap goes up to 36 million. So, or you could just extend him. If you gave him a nuts deal and said, we're going to pay you 40 million a year, the highest earning age is currently 34 in Nick Bosa, but we're going to go crazy. We're going to give you 40 million a year. His salary cap hit this year only jumps 5 million to 24 mil. So versus if you paid him 40 million a year, his salary cap number's 24 mil. If you let him go and trade him away, it jumps to 36. So while that only might be 12 million, that's a lot more spending power, because earlier where we spoke about the cash, you can split that over 5 years. If you go and spend 12 million of salary cap, that's 60 million of spending power, which you're going to lose Myles Garrett, you're going to lose 60 million of spending power. They are not going to sign up for that, because Andrew Berry, Kevin Stefanski, these guys have got their jobs on the line this season. They need to be making the playoffs, or at least around that level. So they are not going to do it. Myles Garrett is just going to have to accept this. He's in Cleveland long term. He's just going to have to sign it. So if they really wanted to trade him, they'll probably sit on him until June 2nd, because you get a slight salary cap. It's easier there. But if the rumours are out, they're going to trade him. Free agents won't want to come. That'll destabilise everything. So he's just going to get an extension. He's going to go on a media tour. Interestingly, it came out the Monday of Super Bowl, because he wants to go and chat to all the media and build hype around it, because they know they can't get him out and the team is not going to budge. What they're hoping is they could shame the team into doing a deal. The minute he started going off on the rest of his roster, he's on the back six. It's like if he just said during the season, right when it ended, and said, these guys just can't find a quality quarterback, I want to go and play with a good quarterback. That would have been a statement that more people could have got behind. The minute he slagged off his teammates, it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
It's not where you want to be. Focus on one position. People could have gone, hey, yeah, fair enough, Watson's let you down.
Yeah.
But it was a weird thing for him to do. But he'll get extended. I'd say 80% chance. So for me, he's going nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, that's, of course, music to my ears. I've having Myles Garrett on your team is a lot better than not having Myles Garrett on his team. I'm firmly in the belief that he's the best player to play for the Browns in the Super Bowl era. You just don't want to let this guy go. I know that, the situation's gotten ugly with the media tour, as you mentioned. One of the last videos I did was kind of on that, and how I thought it was, distasteful at best and disrespectful at worst. I mean, as you said, slagging off his teammates is never a great look for someone that is meant to be, whether or not he wants to be out of the locker room, he's still meant to be the leader in there. But I think it's just really unlikely, as you said, with all of the implications around it. How do you make that work, even if you wanted to? And add in the factor that you don't want to. It's Myles Garrett. You don't want to get rid of this guy. I'm sure that press conference AB did, he already knew about the trade request, and I'm sure that was just him coming out again to reaffirm they're not trading him. So great to hear that. But I'll sum it up there, Jack, so I don't want to take too much of your time or away from you. But thank you so much for joining me today. And as I said, taking time out of your day to come and help a small Browns YouTube channel like mine. I really appreciate everything you do for the Browns online community, and I'll continue to be a massive fan of you and the work that you do. But before you go, just let everyone know where they can find you and the work that you do as well.
Yeah, so follow me on Twitter. It's at Jack Duffin, Duffin. There's articles drop at least every day at 8 a.m. on the OBR. So every single day there's an article that drops at 2 a.m. There's sometimes articles that drop at 10 a.m. But follow my Twitter, it's all on there. So wake up in the morning, there's always Browns content. I'm in the process of going through 800 and something free agents. So every single day we're working through that list of how do we get ready for free agency. We look at every player. So some people just give you a handful of names to watch out for. No, let's go through every guy and say why I'm interested or not interested. So all of that's there. Read through it, and 1st of March I'll drop my free agency cheat sheet. So third year, it's been really successful last two.
Yeah.
These are kind of like the 5 guys in each position group that I think they're going to be after. So rather than everyone else looking at 800, I've given you like about 100 guys that are like, right, if they want a starting quarterback, here's the names. If they want a depth tight end, here's the names to keep an eye on. So yeah, looking forward to dropping that. But yeah, everything's at the OBR. Thanks for having me. And as always, go Browns.
Yep, as always, I'll link all the descriptions where you can find Jack on social media, where you can find his work. I really encourage you to go check out all his stuff at the OBR. Really great stuff that they do over there. And as well, finally, I do also encourage you, if you're interested to be an owner of a football club or a soccer team, as they say in America, then go check out Jack's community-run football club, East Fork CFC. Is it CFC? Yeah, but as again, Jack, thank you so much for coming on. Have a great rest of the weekend. Enjoy the Super Bowl, and hopefully the Browns will be there in no time.